Hi, everyone that's waiting to get in. My name is Cassidy, and this is Teresa Duncan. Teresa is the host of Nobody Told Me That, and she's on this podcast. She's also the author of Moving Your Patients to Yes, Easy Insurance Conversations, and the founder of Odyssey Management. We're so excited to have you, Teresa. Thank you so much for joining us. We're also joined by Tena Palomino, who's our head of corporate talent acquisition and people ops for TempMee. Tena is our culture. She lives and breathes it. And we have an amazing culture here at TempMee. So I'm so excited to hear her insights on that. As we wait for everyone to join, I'd like to see in the chat where everyone is from. So if you go ahead and drop where you're joining from, we'd love to hear it. Tina and Teresa, do you have anything that you guys would like to say before we start?
I'm just super excited to talk about something other than insurance, which is, that's usually my jam. So I'm excited to get this started.
Awesome. I'm so excited. I see there's a question from Jacqueline, Jacqueline was on our last webinar. This is our second TempMe webinar. And she actually, I think we had a giveaway on that one. So she won. But your mic is off. Your mic and video are off. Jacqueline, don't worry. You can only see us. All right. And Teresa, where are you joining from? Like, where are you located?
I'm right outside of DC in a place called Centerville. So right outside of all of the craziness.
Awesome. Yeah. Yes. And then Tina, you are coming in from our Miami office. It's a little warm in Miami this week. I see Lorenzo's in Miami. We've got Lewis and Kissimmee. We've got Philly, Ohio, Atlanta, Tennessee, Colorado, Georgia. We've really got people from everywhere.
Nice.
All right. Well, I feel like we've got a pretty good group of people. Do you guys want to get started?
Yeah, let's do it.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. Welcome to Creating a Culture That Makes a Difference. So first, we're going to go through our agenda today. We're going to walk through TempMe's culture. We're going to talk about office culture and why it's important, building a strong culture in dental practices, maintaining a strong culture through staff changes, which I know is a huge topic right now, and identifying those pitfalls in culture. So really seeing what takes away from the culture and then what adds to the culture. And Tina knows these super well. And Teresa, I think that you kind of know these as well too. We've talked about them a ton, a little bit at least. But the TempMee core values are: it's your ship, leave it better, hard work doesn't have to be serious, whatever it takes, and being a true believer. I'm going to turn this over to Tina to discuss our TempMee culture a little bit and how we provide such a strong culture in office and for our remote workers like myself.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Cass. Excited to be here, excited to talk about TempMee and our culture. It is what I focus all of my time on, from talent acquisition front end, and then also the employee experience. And a lot of that comes from our core values. So our core values were created when it was just Carrie, Ed, and a couple other people in a broom closet with a dream. And so this is what we hire by, we promote by, and we also ultimately separate by. So the first one comes from the book It's Your Ship by Captain Mike Abershoft. And he actually we had the privilege of having him in office to do a talk with us. And this is really just speaking to accountability and taking ownership over not only your own role, but the mission as a whole. So taking accountability and it's your ship to make it what you want it to be. And then the next one is going to be Leave It Better. Leave It Better speaks to not only the office environment and about cleaning up after yourselves and making sure that you're respectful from a volume and a communication standpoint around people that are around you, but we actually take this a couple steps further and leaving it better by enriching our community and the tech ecosystem in general. We have the unique ability, especially as a tech startup growing so quickly in downtown Miami, that we are able to source local bakeries, local coffee shops, local caterers. We single-handedly probably keep the Colombian cafecito stand in business here in downtown Miami, because at least 4 to 6 people go to get culata every day. And so being able to leave it better by volunteering. We just launched a TempMee scholarship that's going to be bringing the dental community and those early professionals into the community by enriching their education and offering scholarships for those who might have had some financial barriers around their ability to come into the industry are ways that our core values have been able to be resonant to more than just cleaning up after you're in the snack area. The next one is going to be hard work doesn't have to be serious. We take this one really seriously because we are a young-ish tech company. And so this is everything from the fact that we really are a family. So we spend a lot of time outside of work together, contrary to many companies that employees can't wait to get away from each other. I actually have to give regular warnings to maybe not spend as much time together. But that also comes with, wear jeans, t-shirts, sneakers, hats, TempMee t-shirts, and casual dress that's just, we're aggressively casual but aggressively respectful, because hard work doesn't have to be serious. One thing you'll note in that is that none of these core values, particularly this one, is that we say like we work hard, or the hardest working, fastest company, whatever it is, because hard work here is implied. What we're doing is really hard. We consider ourselves a unicorn, so that hard work is implied. It just means that we don't have to be serious doing it, and we don't need to. We want to create an environment where people want to be here, because that's where we're going to get the best productivity, and that's where we're going to have the most creativity and enrichment. Then the next page is going to be whatever it takes. Ed likes to say this is if there isn't a way, find a way or make one. And this really speaks to the idea of making it happen. A lot of times in the tech world or in startups and kind of what we're doing didn't exist 3 years ago. And so a lot of times there are going to be problems, issues, concerns, or challenges that we don't have the answer for. We don't have the coverage for, we don't have the SOP for, we don't have the guideline for, whatever the case may be. So you need to just do whatever it takes. You find a way or you make one. And we really take that core value really seriously, and couple that with it's your ship. So if you find a way and you need to make it, it's your ship, make it. And move forward, because getting it done is better than being perfect. And what will never bust you on is making a decision that didn't quite turn out right. But what we will bust you on is inactivity and a stagnation of progress, because we hire you for a reason. We empower you. We trust you. You know your role better than anybody else. So we trust that you know what the best decision is going to be with the information that you have. And that if it doesn't turn out to be right, then we'll work together on it and we'll find a way. And then the last one is true believer. So we're big Ted Lasso fans here. Not sure if anybody else is a Ted Lasso fan, but we're big Ted Lasso fans. And True Believer really just speaks to the fact that we are in very thin air as far as what we've accomplished so far. And we do have a team, a leadership group, founders, investors, an ecosystem that is special. And we don't ask or expect that people need to feel it right away. But if you are here for a month, 3 months, which usually feels like a year or two, and you don't believe that you are really part of something special, or that your impact and your belonging here isn't deeply rooted in your core, and you don't truly believe that, that's okay. We know it's not for everybody. We'll help you find a soft exit if that's the case. But the people who are here really do believe in it, and we really believe in the people who believe, and that's a really important core value for us.
Teresa, thank you, Tina. Sorry, I should probably say that. That was amazing. Teresa, as you look at these core values and as you are in these offices talking to office managers, is there something like this that you're teaching these office managers? Do you have core values? Or how do you approach something like this to help shape office culture?
Well, one thing I want to give kudos on is the fact that you all actually have these defined. There's so many offices that either have hit the ground running, they're de novos, and they just haven't had the chance to develop them. And then what I see most often is not necessarily offices that are in their later stages, but when they're in the growth stage, so they're out of startup and then they're in growth mode, and they're going, wait, I need to define these. And then you end up having some changes back and forth, people come and go. I mean, as you know, this is, what you all excel at, is helping with that. But what I see is that it's in flux. A lot of these core values are in flux, and if there's not some really strong leadership at the top to make sure that they're in place and they're, solid, then they can go with who is really the most vocal in the office, or the tenured person in the office. And so it's up to the leaders to really implement these. So I think it's fantastic that they're defined. And that's honestly half the battle, because I don't know if you've ever sat around and tried to figure out like what you believe in with someone else, but it's not easy to do that. So I imagine the owners of TempMee, when they were first starting out, they were like, okay, this is what we feel, but we have to make sure what it's realistic. And that's another thing too. Let's be realistic about what we expect from people. Not everybody's going to come in as a rock star. And that honestly is what makes you a very good manager or an office leader, is taking a diamond in the rough and finding out what the best possible parts of that person are, and then putting them into a position where they can succeed. That, to me, if you have a overarching core value of everyone is going to be a rock star, that's very simplifying, right? But if you believe in the people that you bring on, then that is going to be the basic core value, and then you can build on it like what you all have, which is really fantastic. I was actually really happy to see this slide, and I'm glad she explained it so well. Yeah, for sure.
Yes. Tina lives and breathes them, so I can't imagine her not being able to explain those beautifully and eloquently.
Yeah.
Do you have any suggestions? This is a few questions that we got when we were promoting the webinar. Is professionals who are not in positions of leadership that want something like this, how can they start to slowly instill that for their, I guess, their bosses or their leaders? Is there a way that you've seen, or do you have any suggestions?
Sure.
Or
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, you have to lead by example. You can't, I mean, it's hard for you, for anyone to really want to be on your ship if you're constantly changing directions, right? So lead by example. And if you believe that, hard work doesn't have to be serious, then you have to, personify that. I want to take it let's take a step back before we go forward trying to improve the office. I want you to make sure you're in the right office, because what I see often, I work with a lot of managers, and what I see often is they come into an office and they go, this office has so much potential. The people are great. There's something off. I'm trying to fix it. And then 2 years later, I'm talking to them again, and they're in the same office. They're still banging their head against the wall. They're still trying to fix it. And I have to have you ask first, are you in the right, are you in the right office? Is it an office that you really jive with how they not only perform clinically, because that's important. You have to make sure that you believe in the office, but are the people around you giving you also, are they feeding you rather than you being the constant motivator? So I think you have to be in the right office first, and then the right people are going to respond to your aspirations to make it, a better place. I think what I have seen often, and it kind of breaks my heart, because, working with all these managers, they want to be the best, and clinical coordinators the same way. They have what I call martyr syndrome, where they want to do everything. And then they think, if I just show them how to do it well, if I just, keep going with it, I'll end up doing it. And they'll eventually follow me with it. I think that puts you in a very unfortunate position where you're constantly giving. And so I just would say, before you put all your heart and soul into changing an office or enhancing an office, make sure it's an office that's going to be a good fit for you, and that is going to be open to that. When you enlist your doctor as a, I guess, a co-driver of all of these values, the doctor is, I'm assuming the doctor is the practice owner and the practice leader. They need to buy in just as much as you do. And if that doesn't happen, then you're going to end up really exerting a lot of energy that probably another office would love to have you in there exerting that energy in their office, right?
Absolutely. And a great way to test that out would be to use the TempMee app. I'm just kidding. I'm going to go ahead and head to the next slide. Do you guys have any last thoughts before I move on? Amazing. All right, let's talk a little bit about what good office culture looks like. What we have compiled through just like working with offices is a few of these: ensuring that clear communication, showing respect and support, collaboration across the team, fostering trust, maintaining a positive atmosphere, embracing flexibility, promoting work-life balance, providing recognition, and then providing or prioritizing learning and development. Obviously, these are all amazing things, but how can offices and professionals alike ensure that this happens in their office?
I love the fact that you have providing recognition and prioritizing learning and development, because I think those go hand in hand a lot of times. If you have an office that believes in educating their teams and then giving them the spotlight to come back and educate the rest of the team, I think I've seen that work so well. You know, for example, you'll go to a conference and you'll take a class, but not everybody was in the class, right? So you come back and you give your 5 or 10 minute, takeaway from that, and then it begins a discussion. And then me as an office manager or the doctor, I'm going to be very thankful that that person took on the role of being a leader in the practice and bringing that information back. Recognition is huge. I can't say enough of that. If someone does a great job, the thank you goes a long way. And it's unfortunate that it goes a long way because most people don't hear it. That's the unfortunate part, right? But the offices I know who are very prioritized on education, I want to give a shout out. I know Jessie Torrey is on the call, her and her team, and she is always taking classes and always taking that information back to the office. That's leadership. I love it.
That's amazing. I love hearing that. Tina, how do you feel like the promoting work-life balance? I know that's something that we have in office. I know that's something that we promote on the TempMee platform is creating that work-life balance. What do you feel like is the biggest thing someone's leader can do to promote work-life balance and to obviously cover their office or their company and make sure that their shifts and their stuff is taken care of, but also their employees are taken care of?
Sure. So we have for those who don't know, we have an unlimited PTO policy, but similar to our dress code that is aggressively casual but aggressively respectful. We also have the policy or just the expectation and the respect for one another that we know that each team needs to have about 60% coverage across their specific unit to maintain business continuity. So having the respect for one another and the business intelligence to understand what the needs are and the expectations are is really important. Also, being able to provide clear metrics. All of the teams know their numbers. They know what they need to hit. They know how we're pacing. They know what the expectations are from the top. We plan quarterly. It goes down to every level of leadership, all the way down to our ICs. So if you're going to be out, that's fine, but you know what you're expected to do. And you also know what your team's expected to do. And I think that carries a lot of true believer expectation in knowing that you're pushing the needle together and that you belong and that you are valuable. And then I think the last part of that is the communication and the recognition of one another. It starts from the top. There's plenty of. I'm a startup junkie, so this is my sixth startup, and there are plenty of leaders that say, "Oh, unlimited PTO," or "We want you to promote work-life balance," and this and that. And they're working 15-hour days. They're never gone, and then you come in 4.5 minutes late, and you get a side eye because you're not working hard enough. So our leaders take their own time off. They prioritize delegating and spreading out the responsibilities and accountability to the team. They prioritize their own health and exercise and activity, eating well, spending time with their families. Carrie often will tell you that the three keys to success are going to be, or three of the keys to success is figuring out what you want, determining how much it costs, and then paying it. Because success isn't free and nothing worth having is cheap. So if you find what you want and you figure out how much it costs, if you're not willing to pay for it, then it's not worth having, and you don't actually deserve to have it. So I think our leaders do a really great job in determining and letting our team know what the cost is, what that is going to buy them. And I think that because they all are true believers and they do whatever it takes, and they have the accountability and the empowerment of knowing it's their ship, that promotes the work-life balance to both accomplish our really amazing and outrageous goals, but also keep people healthy, happy, and able to continue the marathon, definitely not a sprint. It also helps that everybody kind of likes being around each other, so they can blow off steam, and they have that balance where they can go out afterwards, and they are promoting that well-being just by the presence of one another, even though they are kind of extending. It's not uncommon to see laptops out during our happy hours. It's not uncommon for the teams to be out on Saturdays and Sundays, and it's not uncommon to see tacos in the Slack channel at 11 o'clock at night. So the dedication is there because the mutual respect is also there, and I think that comes from the top as well.
Teresa, I guess I want to flip this on its head and talk to you about is there a way to translate that transparency from the top down into dental offices? Do you think that and maybe this is something that you teach and I'm overstepping or I'm talking over something you're about to say, but is there that transparency? Do you think that from the top down, if the dentist was sharing, these are our revenue goals and this is how you contribute to that? Is that something that we could translate and take to dental offices?
Oh, for sure. Transparency is key when you're trying to move people along this goal continuum, right? Because um, I've worked with many offices where the owners or the managers are afraid to share the numbers because they think that there's going to be judgment. You know, we don't want to share that we're trying to hit 1 million this year because that's a lot. And I know some of these, office workers, maybe that's just a big sum of money, but honestly, the transparency comes in. You have to level set across the board, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the transparency comes in with, yes, we're trying to reach this, but it's not like I take all this home, right? And the manager has a big role in this. So you have to take out expenses. You have to take out all of this. Now, when our expenses go up, that also should be communicated to the team. I mean, the clinical team members, they know already the cost of doing business and PPE, all of the new stuff that we have to use. That's been pretty excessive, but maybe on the manager side, on the ordering side, they haven't really conveyed exactly how much it's gone up. And so let's do that. And let's make sure that we tell them, look, inventory has gone up by this amount, so we have to be careful of our expenses. And when you have that transparency of here's what we expect for collection, here's what we expect for production, everybody becomes aware of where we are that month. Are we reaching our goals? Is there anything that we can do to improve? These office meetings that we have where we go over what we can do to improve, if there's no metric to tie it back to, it's just kind of nebulous. Like, we should be doing better. Well, who's going to respond to that? Like, there has to be something to strive for. So I think transparency is a really huge part of the workforce as far as the numbers. But one other thing where transparency comes into play is the expectations of doing the job, the individual job. The clear communication part is key. Here's your job description, even if you're there for a temporary basis, right? Like, here's what we expect in this position, and this is what we look for at the end of the day. And I don't think that's unfair as an employer. I don't think that's unfair as an employee. I'm kind of grateful for this because I know what my roadmap is. I'm not just thrown in. I worked jobs before I landed at my dream job, the dentist I was with for so long. I worked in jobs where they were just like, go in and do this. This is what we do. Just come to me when you need help. That's really not cool to throw somebody in. And in the dental office, we work with a lot of sharp instruments and stuff, right? You can't just throw people in and say, do what you want to do. It's not cool. But I do think that it's hard to put all that together if you don't. And so that's one thing I want to encourage everybody is if you don't have this type of clear communication, if this is hitting all the right buttons and you're like, well, I don't know how to do this, then this is where you reach out and seek help. I don't do as much culture coaching. I really don't, but there's so many good people out there who can help you. And honestly, reach out to, maybe you all have a list of people that are just phenomenal with this stuff. But it does need to be a conversation, and pretty soon if you don't have it, right?
Absolutely. So let's kind of talk about how the culture can kind of take a nosedive. Let's talk about the things that create a bad office culture. Lack of communication, fostering a toxic environment, promoting micromanagement, experiencing high turnover, encouraging unhealthy competition, implementing inflexible policies, lacking recognition for employees' efforts, disregarding their work-life balance, and neglecting employee health, specifically mental health. I want to call out. I think that's a huge one as we go into this new dental landscape, is that mental health needs to be a huge focus for employers. Um, Teresa, why don't you go ahead and talk about what you see in offices?
Sure, but I want to pull back the curtain for just a second because the screen keeps changing, and with
I
every time
know.
it changes, Cassidy, I can see her face going, "Oh no, my face is bigger. Oh no, my face is bigger." I can just see it because we were practicing earlier, and it was really funny. So, you look beautiful. You
Oh,
look
thank
great.
you.
One thing with the I noticed on here, and I saw it on the other slide, the flexibility, and that is one thing I think we struggle with in the dental world because our jobs are mostly on site. Like it's
Mhm.
hard to be flexible when we actually need you right there. And that's the big difference between, the admin side and the clinical side. And I know one thing I've been hearing a lot is there's a lot of people who are like, I want to work from home, and they're all admin people. And then, clinical people are like, I wish I could work from home. I know. I know. But unfortunately, the clinical people are the ones that need to be, chair side. I really like being in office. If I were still the manager, I think I would have to be there a good amount of time, maybe not all the time, because quite frankly, you get a lot done when you're not in the office, right? You get a lot more when people aren't constantly coming to you. But I know a lot of offices are struggling with the flexible work time, the flexible schedule. It's hard, and so I don't know of anybody that's really found a good way of doing it unless they say right off the bat, we understand there's a difference between clinical positions and admin positions, and if we can, be as flexible in this area or give you some time off when you need it, just give us plenty of time because it's hard to replace RDH time and clinical time. Um,
Mhm.
we can work with that, but I think owners should realize and managers should realize that when you have one person who's constantly very flexible, given flexibility, even if that job it fits that, right? There is some kind of side eyeing going on from the clinical side because they're like, oh man, I wish I could go to my kids. I wish I could work from the bleachers in my kids' little league team. I mean, and I get that. We need to understand that as managers. So, how can you be more flexible with your team, your clinical team? How can it be a better workplace for your clinical team? And I do think, I mean, let's just talk about the elephant in the room. We've lost a lot of people. And when you're home for however long we were home with for the COVID lockdown, when you're home and you realize, okay, this is kind of cool, I'm home. Yeah, it's hard to get people back in the office if they're going back to what they feel to be the most rigid of structures. So, how can we make that more appealing? And I hope more people come back to the workforce. We need them, right? But at the same time, um, I work from home most of the time. My dress policy is also aggressively casual. Tina, I love that. I've never heard that before. I didn't know my yoga pants were aggressively casual, but that's what they are, right? So I would have to really think hard about going back to an office where I'd have to put on my penguin outfit all the time and look all spiffy all the time, hair perfect. So I think there has to be some understanding from the management and the doctor owner side that the workplace has to be attractive, has to be just as appealing as being home with family, which is a big draw.
Absolutely. I think honestly, fostering this a great culture is exactly what it takes to get someone in office, and exactly what it takes to get employees and leaders alike to respect each other enough to give each other as much time
Mm.
notice as they can, and to try to figure out a way to cover, whether it's using a dental staffing platform or however you're covering, letting your employee know that, like, hey, you need time off, you give me time to get situated, we will work it out. I think that's like the biggest way I see or have seen um, that work life balance. Awesome. I'm gonna go ahead and, oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, can I hit on the fostering a toxic environment thing? Because
You
in my
absolutely can.
management classes, I talk about this all of the time. We have there's a position in the office, and it can be anyone, not just managers. I've definitely seen this in other positions. We have the queen bee, and the queen bee, you know, reigns supreme, and nothing can happen without the queen bee's approval, and nobody knows where anything is because if she's not there, nothing gets done. This is a terrible person to have in the office. And the unfortunate part is that a lot of times doctors, leaders, practice owners, they know this person gets stuff done, and so they let this person stay in power. It is why you lose people. It is why your conversations with your employees aren't warm and fuzzy, because they don't like where they are. So if you have a queen bee in your office, you know, I think the big key is that you keep losing people and you can't figure out why, right? If you keep losing people and you can't figure out why, you need to look in the mirror. If it's not you, practice leader, if it's not you, is it probably somebody? And it's always the one person that everybody has always had a little bit of a problem with. Or maybe the queen bee is the one telling you who is not a good fit for the office, right? Now, I don't think I was super toxic, but I was definitely a queen bee in the fact that I made sure everything ran and everything did come through me. I mean, I don't think I was super toxic, but I'm sure I was at times. So I say in my classes, I'm a recovering queen bee. I've been there. I know what it looks like from this side, but from working with hundreds of offices over the years, it's very common and it's not cool. And if we could just put those people in one office, that'd be better, right? So, and I see Christine. Hi, Christine. She's a friend of mine in North Carolina. Good coach, by the way. I see her saying king bee. Yes, oh, for sure. A king bee is also there too, right? So, I just think, and from an employee point of view, if you land in an office and it's a queen bee and they've been queen beeing for a long time, that's going to be a very hard office for you to make a difference in, and not every office is a fit. So that's where you got to take care of yourself. That's your work-life balance. If you go home every day and your stomach is turning over and you've got a pit in it and you've got a headache, that's not normal. You should know that, right? That's not normal.
Absolutely.
So that was Cass. We don't have queen bees here.
I was thinking it might be me a little bit, but not in a bad way.
No, this all resonates with the corporate culture as well, because we're primarily a sales organization. We've grown quite a bit. And so the expectations of the sales team are a little bit more rigid. So Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, Monday through Thursday, they have lunch we usually take lunch from 12 to 1. They have power hours twice a day. Fridays, they take lunch at 1. And so it's a little bit more rigid because they are reaching out to dental offices that also have similarly set schedules, and the expectations and their numbers are most probably achieved in those structured time periods, and having everybody pushing together and the energy on the floor together. But that doesn't mean that the marketing team needs to come in at 8 and have a 2-minute grace period for tardiness. And that doesn't mean that it's going to be realistic for the devs who also work overseas to be accommodating a 5 o'clock end. Right. So we've also seen that the flexibility with the different teams and the schedules and the time off and those sorts of things are really important. But what enables that is just respect, and the fact that nobody on the marketing team is going to leave anyone high and dry just because they're come in at 8:30 opposed to 8 on the dot. And the marketing team and the sales team have enough respect for each other to know that each piece works in their own function and how that piece fits into the greater good. And from a toxic work environment, we separate quickly, especially with how fast we move. We can tell quickly who that queen bee is going to be, or queen or king bee, or whatever the case may be. And contrary to many of the, especially sales organizations that I've worked for, we will cut our top performer immediately. If it is at the cost of the morale, the culture, and the overall team health, we will 100% cut that top performer for the short-term loss of the long-term gain and health of the organization. And I can say that with 1000% confidence, and know that that has been a tremendous amount of of success that has led to our sales team. Some attrition, right? Because it's hard to like lose somebody, especially pretty quickly. But you can also see after you make those changes the and feel the physical like relief of the team. They're like, oh my gosh, okay, now I can actually breathe. Like, oh my gosh, okay, now I can actually, do this and that. And then hard work doesn't have to be serious, and you can be aggressively casual, and you have that respect back by getting rid of or nipping out those that toxicness. And we always give the opportunity because we think that coaching, and maybe you don't know you're the queen bee, maybe you don't know that people don't like you, and so it's the responsibilities of the leaders to say, hey, why don't you dial this back, or why don't you let's try that approach differently, or this is a story I'm telling myself for how you've approached this situation. So something we like to say is, I'm going to step into the danger here and tell you candid, direct feedback that that I've observed or the team has had, or this instance, and then give them the opportunity to correct those behaviors. And then if they don't, then they have hopefully not, they'll be able to take it as a learning moving forward, and that sort of behavior and those consequences of that sort of behavior will likely carry them through. And a lot of times you'd be surprised that some of those people that are the queen bees, or have, especially in sales, a little bit more abrasive of personality, they've just never been told how they come off, and how you get so much more traction and credibility and authentic authority by just not being a jerk, and just having a different approach is a lot of times they just don't know.
Yeah,
I
that's
think
very
I,
true. That's very
yeah,
true. I worked with an office that the manager was very queen bee, and I said to her, you're a little rough with these girls, and she said, well, if I'm not rough, nothing's going to get done. And I said, well, how long has that been going on? Because this is a new team. How long have you had that attitude? This is a new team. Maybe this team will get it done. And, she was very open to the conversation, but I think it was because I was a third party. I think if her doctor had had this conversation, it would have been very, a little bit different. But hearing it from an outside party, she said, okay, well, you know what, let me try it, because everything I'm doing isn't working. I keep losing people. I keep doing this, doing that. And it was a matter of, she did not know how she came across. She did not know how abrasive she was. And I think part of that was driven by, she's done it so often. She just was tired of doing the same thing over and over again. And, it's that whole cycle of, it's just going to keep going. If nothing changes, it's just going to keep going. I like, Tena, that you said the theory of, yeah, you're going to have some short-term pain for long-term gain. That is really scary to, I think, today's dental leaders. The doctors in particular will tell me, I don't want to let this person go, because number one, what are the patients going to think? And it's going to look like, I can't keep a good staff. And then there's the whole, I can't find anyone, which is where you guys come in. But there is that's huge fear. I don't want to fire them, because now what? And I don't want to, leave myself short-staffed or the team short-staffed. But what I hear all the time is, once you fire the person that is really making everybody's life miserable, the patients know. You'll hear patients come in and they'll say, I wondered why you kept her around, or I never really had a good interaction with her. I mean, I've let people go and heard, oh, thank God, she was terrible. I've heard this from patients, and they will tell you once the person's gone. They're not going to tell you when they're there. They're going to smile and nod and then go to the car and be like, oh gosh, she was awful. Right. So you're not going to hear these things. So I think it's really good to stay in touch with your team about it, gauge the mood, and then, yeah, cut the dead weight. It's better for you in the long term, but yeah, it might hurt a little bit.
And it usually does. But our director of sales always says his only regret is that he doesn't let people go sooner. Because when you identify those issues, it's doing more damage than most people even know, especially to the people around those who are being affected by the morale. And the ones that don't know that they're being abrasive necessarily, but they've also learned that from somewhere. So when you have good examples of leaders and founders like we have here, that you're just a better person by being around them, then your leaders start to learn how to acclimate to different types of individual contributors and how to cater your one-on-one conversations to different things, how to identify areas of opportunity for employees that maybe it's an aptitude, maybe it's an awareness issue, maybe it's just an attitude problem, right? And some of those are coachable and some of them are not, but you learn by seeing and you learn by having those around you. And then the better the people are around you, the more those queen bees and those jerks really do stand out. When we bring somebody onto the sales team or any of the teams that just they are a noticeable deficit to the team, they are a noticeable deficit to the team.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because they're surrounded by so much positivity. And so keeping that around longer than you need to is going to be doing more damage, that's going to stay. You're going to traumatize the people that are around you, even after you leave them. If you have that person leave, that person's still going to be traumatized, especially if you have earlier career staff. They're going to be like, oh my God, like this person's gone, but they're going to tell stories about that for years to come if they're bad enough. And then they're going to carry that around for your practice. We have plenty of stories of people who have had really exciting exits. They had stayed around maybe a little bit too long, and then that still stays with the staff. And so that's an ancillary cost that, they say that some patients go back to the car and they say, oh, wow, she was awful. I've done that and I don't go back.
Yeah. Yeah,
so
exactly. That's you'll never know.
Yeah, right.
I also just think that's transparency too, is talking through those decisions at a high level with your employees and being able to say, you're not bad mouthing them, but like we decided to separate for this reason. And I know that with TempMee, at least that's where I currently am. That is something I value so much, is that I have this business sense now that I've never had, because the business sense is explained to me when decisions are made. Maybe it's not the whole nitty gritty. There's things that are above my pay grade that I don't need to know, but the base is explained to me. And now anytime that there's a decision made, I can look at it from a non-emotional standpoint and be like, I see the business decision behind that. I can still like this person as a person, but they were detracting from what we're doing, and what we're doing is changing people's lives. So that's the only important thing.
Yep. And we always say here at TempMee, if you don't know why we're doing something, ask. We might not be able to tell you every nitty-gritty detail like Cass just said, but if you don't know what we're doing or why, then ask, because everybody, it's your ship is sometimes works to our disadvantage. But they everyone has an opportunity to voice their opinion or share, because if there's an opportunity for us to get 1% better, we want to hear that from whoever and anybody at any part of the organization. But just because you've been heard doesn't mean that is going to be directly correlated to what it's going to happen, right? So there's a difference between a voice and a vote. But if there's ever any confusion or any frustration or any ambiguity about why we did something, then ask us, because we will absolutely tell you what we can. And then that also, like Cass said, gives the staff a better idea of like, wow, this wasn't just made in a vacuum, or this wasn't just a knee-jerk reaction. Sometimes it is, and then so we'll be like, didn't really think about it. We just needed to do something, and that's fine too. But then the staff learns from that too. The staff learns that this was a time-sensitive, pressured decision that needed to be made in one way or another, and we didn't have the luxury of being able to iterate on multiple different factors. We just had to make the best decision possible. That's a good example of strong leadership and taking accountability. So when somebody then was like, well, they just did it, I don't know what to do, I'm going to make the best decision that I can. They've learned from the example of the senior most leadership in their organization that sometimes that's just what you got to do. So just do your best and move on.
And to give a dental example of that, there have been many offices that will implement a new modality like lasers or implants, and the doctor will go or the hygienist will go and get, fancy new machines and come back with a whole new protocol. And now the team is being told, okay, we do this, this, and this, and then we're scheduling this, and this way. And I am always surprised when, I hear a doctor tell me, well, we tried to implement this and it just never worked. And I'll say, well, what was your onboarding for your existing offices like? What was that like? Did you walk them through why? Did you walk them through why it's better for the patient, why it's going to make their life easier? Because what ends up happening is the employee sees a new task. a new task, and if there's no why behind the task, they're kind of like, okay, so this is just going to make everybody else more money and make my life harder. What's the point here? And so there has to be onboarding of even our existing employees whenever something new, a new system, a new, technology in dentistry is amazing. We're getting stuff thrown at us left and right. I have one office I'm talking to, and the manager's like, I'm trying to implement AI, so for all of the X-rays, and she's like, they're just not understanding why it's such a big deal, because now they have to do extra steps. They have to make sure that all the stuff that goes with it. And now there has to be extra time to show the patient. But the ROI on it in the end, not the ROI on the technology, the ROI on the patient experience, that has to be communicated. So I would love to give a virtual hug and a pat on the back to managers and the practice owners, or actually any team lead who has had to have a conversation with a patient, or I'm sorry, an employee, where they need to get rid of this employee quickly. So I just want to call out the fact that we all have this red flag system, an internal red flag system, and a new manager, a new team leader does not trust that, because they don't know if they just have never done it before. So as a new manager, as a new owner, when I feel that kind of, I don't know if this is going to work, early on in like the 90-day temporary period, which 90 days is so long. It's so long for a temporary period. It's honestly, most people know within the first 3 days if this person's going to work. The more you do this, you have to listen to your gut. And if you know it's not going to work, but you think you're just going to make it work, that's a recipe for disaster. So I just want to give some encouragement to the people who are in this position now, where they have to make those hard decisions and they've never done that before, that you have to trust your gut. Will you get it wrong? Maybe once, sure. But for the most part, your gut is telling you something and you need to listen to it. If you have the practice's best interest at heart, the patient's best interest at heart, your gut is trying to tell you something. You need to listen to it.
Only regret is not letting him go soon enough. That's what he always says.
Exactly. That's what made me think of it. I think back to the people I've had to fire, unfortunately, over my time as a manager. And if I had done it when I first had that gut feeling, oh my gosh, people's lives would have been so much better, right? My life would have been easier. I would have less gray hairs and all that other stuff. So
absolutely.
Yeah,
well, let's talk about how we can build strong culture in dental practices, and how we can really, I know we talked about it a little bit about what good office culture looks like, but how do we implement that? How do we move forward from that? Teresa, how do you feel like, what's the basis for every office that you talk to, or office manager? What are you saying? Like, how do they start this?
Well, I mean, just defining it is the most important part, right? And I love that. I mean, I'm loving everything Tena says, but when she said you have a voice, and a voice is not a vote, but it still counts, right? When you go to the team and want to build this culture, sometimes that's not the best way. Sometimes it has to start with the leader, right? And a lot of times it's not the manager, it's the practice owner, and it should be. And if the practice owner abdicates down to the manager, that's not necessarily the best way to do it either. So that's a little tough. I have always taught to put the patient first. So for me, that patient-centered care would actually go towards the top, because when I have a conversation with a team member about, it's a course correction conversation, it's never because I think this team member is doing a terrible job. I always tie it back to patient care. This team member's behavior is impacting negatively the way we provide care to the patient. I may think she's a terrible person, but that shouldn't come out, because that's not good leadership. That's just your opinion, right? But I would never have a conversation with a person just to tell them that they're a terrible person. If I'm having a conversation with an employee, it's because we seated a patient late. We forgot to provide certain services to a patient. We forgot to get a signature. We forgot to go over medical history. All of it needs to tie back to, are we providing the best patient care? And if that's your North Star, the cultures do line up. I mean, all of the talking points do line up. If you have one overarching, like I said, philosophy of good patient care, quality patient care, quality patient experience is really, I think, what we need to think about instead of just care. It's really the experience of the patient in general. Then all the rest of it falls into place. The team is going to want to collaborate on this. The team is going to want to move, the ball towards the goalpost. But I think many offices struggle with that because they know they're in the business of healthcare, and that kind of just becomes oh, well, that's pretty obvious, right? Well, no, let's make it practical, right? So I think I answered your question there. I kind of went off on my little tangent there. So
it was beautiful. It was beautiful. Tena, do you have anything that you'd like to add as somebody who literally builds strong culture every day in our office?
It's consistency. So defining it and then being consistent, making sure that you're exhibiting it and demonstrating both the positive examples and owning and having accountability over sometimes the missteps. One of our founders, we were in our leadership meeting recently, and he is a very expressive individual. And so he will often have a reaction to something without a filter. And we love that about him, but sometimes those reactions are a little bit more strongly worded than maybe it would be appropriate for an entire audience. But he will dial it back and say, okay, let me try that again. And that's the same thing that we all do. And it's not because we're poor examples of a culture, or we're bad people, or we're mad or whatever, but we're all going through different things, and we all have reactions to different stuff. So being genuine to yourself and being genuine to your team and owning when, no, I was wrong. That wasn't the right way to handle that. Or when you're having a tough conversation, being vulnerable yourself and giving and taking the accountability of how your actions have impacted the situation is also a way to build those strong practices, and then being consistent about having that accountability and reinforcing the definition of what you're expecting, and recognizing when those things are happening, correcting in the moment when there may be not, and then just being able to carry that across the rest of the organization. I know I've heard multiple new leaders be like, come and they doubt themselves, right? They talk about something and then they're just like, I don't know if that's right. And it's just them self-calibrating, right? Or the individual contributors that come in and they mess something up and they're like freaking out, or they're just like, it's not a big deal. And then they're like, was it a big deal? They're just internally calibrating, and that's okay. And so we want them to then ask, Cass will have some of her team come up to her, I'm sure, and say, is it me? Am I the problem? Or because I feel that this, and then it's up to Cass to say, you were kind of the problem, or no, you're justified in that, and this is why. So then they can strengthen that calibration for themselves, and then be able to toggle themselves around in other situations moving forward, and then being able to feel safe to do that consistently is what builds that strong culture. And then when new people come in and they see that the 19-year-old marketing coordinator is openly coming in and being like, did I mess this up? And then everyone's like, no, you did great. And they're like, okay. Then the newer people on the team are going to be like, did I mess something up? And they're going to start feeling more comfortable to be creative and speak up and build those relationships. And that's ultimately what I think has enabled us to scale the way that we have without diluting our culture.
I also think.
Oh, sorry, Cassidy. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say really quick. Our co-founders, something that they always say that has been so different from any other place that I've ever been employed is high value companies don't fear. What is it? High value companies don't fear conflict.
High trust companies don't fear conflict.
Yes, and
high trust teams don't fear conflict, and that's because we just fight a lot.
And I think that's normal, right? Like if
It is
you're
normal.
working with a family, that's if you're home, you're fighting all the time, right? I mean, honestly, about stupid stuff. So, and you're with these people more and more. So I think it's okay to have conflict, and it's okay to go, half a day without talking to someone. Honestly, it's not a problem as long as it doesn't continue and impact the morale. Sometimes you need a break after a tough conversation. And it's kind of impossible to expect them to come back at you and have that same smile on their face when you just had this, big disagreement. It's okay to have those big disagreements. But, to your point, I think, Tina, it's hard to be a new manager. And there's lots of hygienists who have reached out to me because they're becoming a manager now. They're moving into the admin role. And it's hard to be a new manager. You really do feel like you have no idea what you're doing. And there's all these people who have been doing this longer, the admin side of it, and now you're supposed to manage. And I've also worked with a lot of dental spouses who are coming into the office, and they're not all evil. They really want to make a difference in the practice, right? I love dental spouses. I really do. I think they do a good job. And yeah. And so, but they're completely, the whole new management piece, a new manager, if you are working under a new manager, give them a little bit of grace, but also because they're still trying to figure it out. But if you are a new manager, just understand that just because you have the title manager, that doesn't make you the overlord of the office. And that's something that, you need to look in the mirror. Are you the problem? And in most cases you're not, because honestly, if you're taking this webinar, you're open to that conversation. It's the people who are not taking classes like this and webinars like this that probably could use it the most, right? But I do think new managers, they struggle with so many of these issues behind the scenes and just want to do a good job, and they need a little bit of coaching as well. So I think there's just room all around for big pats on the back and, hey, how you doing? And is everything okay? Is there anything I can do to help you? That there's a lot of room for that in the office.
I also want to point out that this is recorded and will be sent to everybody. So if you just want to slide this over to the queen bee in your office, feel free.
Say, hey, I was listening to this girl and she's a former queen bee. You should probably listen to her. No, don't say that.
Well, here's some tips to create a strong office culture. I think these are things that we've been talking about the entire webinar. I do want to kind of open this up for the last few minutes of the webinar for people to ask questions. That way they can get, we already have a question from Jacqueline, our wonderful Jacqueline. Jacqueline's asking, what can she do to improve? If they're difficult, they usually do not have a valid answer except when they want to be those type of people. So what did I do and how can I improve?
Well, she's asking, how can I make it better? So she's asking the right question. And if she gets somebody who's saying to you, well, you just got to do it this way. Well, that's not an answer. So, I mean, no wonder you kind of just get this blank stare, from your employee when you just say, well, just do it this way because I said so. Or why can't you just, do it this way? I showed you this way. And so exactly what Jacqueline's saying, she's just trying to ask the right questions. So I want more Jacqueline's in my office, right? So, but now I see what she's saying. She's giving an example that we totally turned her example into a question. So see how awesome we are, Cass. We totally took that. Right?
We did. We really did. Are you seeing companies building mental health days into time off packages? If so, in what way as general PTO?
I'll let Tena take this because she probably has her finger on the pulse of more of the, the tech and the corporate, and then I'll give a dental spin to it.
Yeah, so we are. So especially for us with our PTO, we don't actually ask or require that somebody tells us exactly what or why they're taking off. Most of the time the staff does, because we just like each other and everybody wants to get a taco after they do something cool on vacation and stuff. But a lot of companies, what I'm seeing, and generally unlimited PTO is a really difficult thing to monitor especially if you haven't established the foundation from the beginning. And there's two sides of PTO, right? It's either unlimited and then people feel like they can't take it or they abuse it, or it's it's accrued and people feel like it's punitive and they don't get enough of it. And then when they do have it, they use it all in probably the most inconvenient time for a business, right? Because they feel like they're going to lose it or they're not going to get paid out for it, or they're in a toxic environment, so they're using it just to use it. So my recommendation is just fostering and starting with respect, understanding that and setting expectations of how much time you have off, what is reasonable, as far as like the expectations of what's reasonable for you to be able to get your job done, and what's reasonable for the business to be able to continue the continuity and the growth that you need. In a dental practice, I guess it would be that, right? Like, you know how many patients we have, you know how much time off that the office can afford. Same thing with sales, you know how many numbers what kind of numbers you need to do to hit your monthly goals, and you know what this is. So giving people the education to understand what their accountabilities are, and then empowering them to make those decisions and then backing them up, I think is a solid foundational way to give them the way to say, well, my family's in town and I want to spend time with them. Similarly, I am super burnt out. I've worked 16 hours, 16 days straight because of whatever sprint period we're on. I just need a day. And you're going to have a similar respect for both of those accommodations, because they're going to be showing up accountable to the very clear and transparent expectations of what the business is going to need. And when you're talking to your team about where you are with stuff, I will kick out my team, especially when I know that we have a big month coming up or end of quarter coming up with hiring or something like that, especially in startup world, because there's always going to be something else you need to do. I'll kick them out at like 4:30 on Fridays for 3 weeks or something, or like maybe two days. I'm just like, okay, we're all leaving at 4:30 today. Just plan your day accordingly, because the next few weeks are going to be really hard. And so the leadership having that cognition about like what the business is going to need to, and letting them know what's coming, is I think also going to foster some trust. And then you won't have to worry about, are they lying to me? Are they abusing their time off? Like, what is it? Like, are they really sick? If there's that trust, because they're going to feel responsible for the progress of the overall goal too. So for I guess that's a long way of saying, like, I don't really care why people take off. I want them to do what is going to be flexible for them. Similar, like, we don't if we observe certain national holidays, but not necessarily specific religions or specific diversity in days and things like that, because we want you to take off the days that are important to you, and we want you to recognize what's going to be impactful for you and your loved ones to spend time together. So we want you to do that. And we know you're going to do what you need to do here and do that, because everything's out on the table.
So I would like to just also point out that in the employee manual that everybody should be reviewing, there should be a policy on that. It should be black and white, so you can, as long as you adhere to it. But here's where the North Star of providing a good patient experience comes into play, because the policy is written with that in mind. But also, if you do need to take time off, aside from, of course, the emergencies, and that we always should give grace for that. When you take time off, we need to make sure that patients are covered. And so that's the North Star. It's not about, oh, she always takes time off. We have to make sure that the patients are going to not feel a blip in their experience. And by having that as your guiding principle, then you make arrangements for people to help out. You make arrangements to have coverage. You contract with a service to bring in people to help out during that time. But as a small business, if you're not a corporate dental office who has people that can rotate from other offices, if you're a small business, which many of us are, if you're a small business, having somebody missing is huge. I mean, that's a huge impact on the practice. So as much time as you can give, for the PTO, but mental health days, they hit without any warning. So yeah, as a manager, I have to give a little bit of grace, but I also would hope that I picked up on some of the warning signs before that hits. And so it's a whole different webinar, right? That I'm probably not qualified to give, but, but it's really a good manager practice leader is keeping an eye on the mental health of their employees. And I know that that was on one of the slides that we talked about. Everybody has to keep out. You have to look out for each other, right? And if I see that one of my employees, my coworkers are struggling, I would like to bring that to someone's attention. And if it's not appropriate, I'm going to be told it's not appropriate. But that's just me. I have to look out for people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we're all in this together type of thing. Like truly,
Yes.
every single company should feel like they're all in this together. Um, Jessie Torrey, that was one of your friends, correct?
Yes. Yes. She's a good girl.
Jessie, yes, she said looking for phrasing when it comes to checking in with your quiet hard workers so they can be honest and feel safe in voicing their complaints or suggestions.
So with this quiet person, a lot of times coming at them and saying, hey, how are you doing? And how's everything, going? That is not going to get the answer that you want. I think making sure that that person knows that you are going to be ready to hear what they have to say when they say it. So maybe that's sitting next to them when they have lunch. Maybe that's just going and grabbing coffee and talking about something else, entirely. That person needs to see you as a safe place to talk to, a safe person to vent to. That doesn't necessarily mean that having a safe conversation is not the same thing as having a safe and open relationship. And when you go to them and just want to make sure that they're okay, their first instinct, if they're quiet and not used to saying these things, is going to be like, did I do something wrong? Am I okay? So it's a continuity with this type of employee. We all have the super extrovert personalities where you don't have to ask them if they're okay. They're going to tell you. This type of person is you really looking at more of the nonverbal cues, but it's really more of a continuity, not necessarily a check-in at the time.
I like that. I think that's something that we've talked about this entire webinar is consistency for the culture, for your employees. Consistency is key.
Yeah.
So
sure.
I'm going to give like another minute for any last minute questions. And then we're going to wrap this up. So as we are waiting for those questions to come in, do you ladies have anything you'd like to add?
I think this has been just so much fun. I think
really have had.
Yeah, but grace is what I want to just keep talking about. Give grace to your employees. You don't know what position, what situation, what they've got going on at home. I think there's just been, since COVID, patients are meaner. I'm just going to say it. Patients are meaner. It's been more difficult to work with them. And so give all of yourselves a good pat on the back, because I hear so many conversations about what these wacky patients are doing. So pat yourself on the back for, weathering COVID, for weathering the great reset or whatever we're calling it today. Just give yourselves a lot of grace, because you're in a great industry. I love this industry so much. So I'm glad you're here. Glad you're all here.
We were so glad to have you both on this webinar today. You guys are getting great feedback in the chat. I hope that you can see that. We're gonna stop here at an hour, but I think that this is an amazing conversation to continue. So Teresa, I will be emailing you about maybe another webinar coming up soon,
Nice.
where we can continue this conversation a little bit more in depth. So I've given it like one more minute. Some people are typing, but I think they're just saying how great you both are.
Oh.
But you should all, I love that. So you should all be getting this in your email. If not, it will be uploaded to YouTube at some point as well. And then we'll be sharing some clips throughout on our socials. Also, if you are in this webinar and you would like to be in our Facebook group, please, please, please let us know by tweeting at us or commenting on our Facebook, and we can invite you if you are a verified TempMee user. It's a great community. So I just wanted to give a quick plug to that. And then a quick plug to Teresa's. You have 2 podcasts, right?
I do. I have Nobody Told Me That, which is insurance and management. And then Chew on This is more of a comedy type thing. We talk about current events and crazy TikTok trends. And there's a thing called turkey teeth going on in Turkey, where people are going and get teeth in Turkey. So those are the kind of stories we talk about. And then you can find me all over social. And if any of you are needing insurance training, I'm your girl. I know it's a total non sequitur, but here we are.
Plug yourself, go for it. And Tina, you're gonna see Tina, you're on a few other webinars, right? You're in like a tech coalition where you speak quite a bit. Tina is an amazing resource.
She's a rock star.
She really is a rock star. So I'm just so thankful that we could have you on this webinar today, Tina, so they can see how amazing our in-office people ops and our acquisition is as well. Like we talk the talk and we walk the walk, and Teresa's an amazing, amazing resource as well. So thank you so much. And have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Cass.
Bye. Thank you guys so much.